Welcome to the Child Care Director's Chair, the podcast for bold educators who are ready to lead, grow, and shake things up in early childhood education. Whether you're a teacher eyeing that lead role, a lead stepping into leadership, or a center owner dreaming big, this is your space to grow with purpose and leave your mark. Hosted by heart-centered leadership coach Erica Sacoccio, each episode brings you real talk, actionable tools, and a contagious laugh or two, all designed to help you step into your next level with confidence. So pour your coffee, pop in those earbuds, and take your seat, because your leadership journey starts right now in the Child Care Director's Chair.
Hey guys, welcome to the Child Care Director's Chair podcast. I'm so excited, but I'm always excited. I have in the studio today my girl, Coach Ray from New Orleans. The crowd goes crazy.
I know.
So I want to ask you guys a question. Have you ever walked into a child care center where it felt like every classroom felt connected? The teachers supported one another, the director was approachable, and everyone is working towards the same goal? And you can actually feel the positive culture. Well, that doesn't happen by accident. It happens through intentionality and intentional collaboration. Today, we are talking about how to build that kind of team. Joining us today is my dear friend, Coach Ray from New Orleans. She is an R&R specialist who works along the side of teachers and directors to strengthen relationships, improve collaboration, and build a thriving early childhood program. She's also a trained class observer, and she understands that quality isn't just about what happens in the classroom, but it also is about relationships, and that's what makes great teaching possible. Today, she's here to share some practical strategies that you can use to bring your team together through collaboration. So welcome to the show, my friend.
Welcome. I guess I'll say welcome again. It's always good to be here, and especially with you. So,
Oh, yes. So Coach Ray is a frequent visitor on our podcast, but today is the first time we're going to really get to dig in deep about collaboration. So, Coach Ray, for those of you who do not know you, tell us a little bit about your journey and what led you to become an R&R specialist, and what does that role look like?
sure. So, if you don't know me, my full name is Raina Woodside Howard, but I like to say ever since I was knee high to a duck. So, ever since I was small, I've always been Ray. That's what everybody knows me as. I think it was a great natural segue in life to what I do now, where I'm affectionately known as Coach Ray. Like Erica said previously, I am a native New Orleanian. I am an early care education specialist for a child care resource and referral agency here in the New Orleans area. My journey actually started with me being a pre-K for teacher in the industry. This is my 16th year. And as I started to look, I started to realize that kind of the average ECE hierarchy didn't seem to necessarily align with what I wanted to do and what I felt like my purpose was. So, fast forward, I was able to become a coach, and now currently I support teachers in strengthening practices and really building those relationships and understanding how collaboration is really the thread that connects everything together in the center.
Okay. So, Ray, I know and you know relationships are so important. And, we talk about how everything is rooted in relationships. Why are relationships the foundation for a successful early childhood program?
You said why?
Yeah, why? Let's dig a little deeper. Why does it matter? Why do I have to work with the people that are in my building? Why does it matter if we're communicating? Why does it matter if we like each other? Why does that matter?
So let's think about being teachers in the classroom and you being with children. A lot of the times classrooms that thrive, they have children that are able to communicate with each other. You have children that are able to have a level of trust with each other. That's how it is with adults as well. You want to be able to have a level of trust with the person that you're working with every day. That just makes life so much easier and it makes the day go by quicker. Let me tell you, when you are able to actually talk to the person that you work with and, like Erica said, really talk. I know sometimes we have these conversations, and I like to call them the tip of the iceberg conversations, very surface area. Hey, how's the weather sort of thing. But when you're really able to dig under the iceberg and really see the things that the person does well, learn a little bit more about them, it's easier to be able to collaborate. It's easier to be able to sit down and see how you can truly work together because you develop a level of trust in that person. You feel secure. Just like the children open up when they feel secure, we're the same. We open up when we're able to feel secure and have a level of safety, whether that's emotional, psychological, or otherwise.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. This reminds me of a conversation I was having with the teacher yesterday, and she had
Oh,
it wasn't a new teacher. I guess I'm going to use, for lack of a better word, a float teacher who was working in the classroom with her because the person that she typically worked with went out on leave. So she said, "Oh, I kind of feel like I was doing everything in the room," and I said, "Well, did you talk about it in the class? Did you ask her to do something and she didn't do it?" She goes, "Well, no." I said, "So two things." I said, "You have to communicate with the person that you're working with because she may be thinking that it's your room. She doesn't want to step on your toes because that
yeah.
sometimes you hear people say, 'I don't want to step on toes. It's not my room.'" I said, "Also, if you were doing all of like the daily routine stuff and she was watching the children, maybe she thought like that was what you wanted her to do." I
Mhm.
said, "You have to talk out loud all day, right? Conversation all day." And she's like, "Well, I didn't want to come across bossy." And I said, "Well, there's a way to communicate." I said, "I'm not saying to say to her, well, go do that." I said, "It could be something as simple as it's time for us to change the diapers. Would you like to change the diapers or would you like to set up snack?" Right? Give her the choice. That would be okay. Or you could say, "I'm gonna do the diapers. Would you mind setting up the snack so that way when the children are done being changed, they can wash their hands and they can go right to the snack table?" And she's like, "Yeah, that makes sense." And I'm thinking, a lot of times we have like this misperception of what the other person is doing or not doing. And this is why
Sure.
consistency in classrooms is so important, right? And then I think the other part, Coach Ray, is let's talk about when you're working with a partner and sometimes it's just not working. What are your ideas or thoughts about that? Maybe what should directors do if they have two people working together? Because again, it to me, I always joke around and say it's like a work marriage, right? You're with somebody 9 hours
Yeah.
in the day. I don't know about you, but I work with Angela more than I ever see my husband, Mr. Sakosio. So, right? So that happens. You've got teachers in a room together 9 hours a day, minus their lunch break. What happens when you have people whose personalities just don't mix well?
I would like to say to that, Erica, that's a real thing, first of
Yeah.
all. I think in a perfect world, of course, we want all of these lovely teacher marriages to work, right? Just like in the real world. But of course, in reality, that's not always the case. So,
Yeah.
as a director, as a leader, you want to be intuitive. So, you want to make sure that you're observing and looking at things as a leader to notice some inconsistency, to notice some, I like to say, kind of undercurrent discourse. Sometimes it's not always the things that are said, it's the things that aren't said. Is how they are in the classroom. Is how they're not communicating verbally much, but a lot of those nonverbal cues are showing you like, something's going on here. Maybe we need to have a conversation. So everybody deserves to have a conversation to be able to attempt to get on track. But there are times where that teacher marriage or that teacher team just doesn't necessarily work, and that's why, as directors, you want to be, or as leaders, rather, you want to be very intentional in the beginning when you are pairing people together. You don't want to just necessarily pair them together strictly due to credentialing. That shouldn't be the only reason you're pairing people together. You should look at like personality types. What personalities can be over domineering sometimes to someone? And like you said in your previous example or instance, sometimes that person that's not as dominant, they're like, wait, I don't know if I'm supposed to be doing this. Am I supposed to be helping her? I don't want her to think I'm trying to take over. So let me sit back. And then the other person is like, like I said, I like to call it Pinky and the Brain syndrome. They're the brain. They're going to take over the world. They're going to take over the class. And the other teacher is just Pinky, just following on along. The brain not realizing that Pinky really doesn't want to do that. Then they don't know what they're supposed to be doing. So as leaders, you want to make sure that you're not only looking at how to pair people based on credentialing, but that you're looking at those other intangible factors as well.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think the other thing is, even before we're pairing, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the pairing. So, we're talking about collaboration. Perhaps to make sure you get the best fit, that you include the teachers in the hiring practice.
I agree
So that they
totally.
have options to say, I'd like to ask some questions to see how they feel comfortable about the fit. And then asking, like, what is your teaching philosophy, right? Because you can have two really great teachers who have different teaching philosophies, right?
Yes,
And they could both be aligned with your school philosophy, but they just maybe implement things differently. So that could
yes.
cause this, right? It could be not that one is better than the other, but they could just be two different ways that where
Right.
they
They're just
do
different.
activity. Yeah.
They're
Um,
just different. Like you
yeah.
said, being able to give teachers, that's one of the biggest things in collaboration that's such a benefit, is being able to have a level of autonomy.
Mm,
Children want to be able to have choice, and we say that we give them this level of choice in the class, we say,
mhm.
right? So even as adults, we definitely want to be able to have that level of autonomy and feel like we have a sense of ownership or contribution as to who's going to be, like you said, in this teacher marriage, in this educator work relationship. Because when it's just given to you, you're like,
Yep.
okay, I see that, but I really didn't have much say in this. And if I would have had some say in this, I could have asked this, or maybe I would have noticed something in how they responded to something philosophically that you didn't pick up on. But
Mm,
because I'm a teacher in that classroom, I pick up on it. And I know maybe, like you said, it's not better or worse. It just may not always align with the culture and how you implement things in the classroom and how y'all will be able to work collaborative.
yeah. Um, the other thing I think is really important to acknowledge is, if you have a program that is growing your leadership, you can have a TA that's working with the lead for a couple years and they might be doing really great work together, but then your TA starts to become at a place where they've kind of learned everything they can learn from that co-teacher. And sometimes I have to say, I've seen this too, where the assistant outgrows
Oh,
the
yeah.
the lead that they're working with, and they take that initiative and they invest in themselves and they do PD and they get their CDA, and it's time to move them into their own classroom. So I think it's really important that the whoever makes those decisions in your program, that you're aware of that. Another thing I wanted to go back to, like that you had said, things that are said, things that aren't said, really pay attention to body language and the little scarfs under the breath, right? When you hear those things and see those things, you should address those immediately, because if not, those things fester. And then your relationships, not only in that room, because then what happens at the water cooler is people start wanting to pick sides. So it's really important that
Yeah.
we're really paying attention to that too, because one relationship can really set off your culture and your whole program. So I think that
Yeah.
that
You
is,
start to
yeah,
have
you have to.
you start to have the polar opposite of what you want with collaboration and with unity and with
Mhm.
togetherness, because they're like, oh, well, I agree with her because of such and such, or I agree with the way that he did it. And like you said, that's when that division starts to begin.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's like a bad cut that starts to get an infection. Um, the other thing I think that we should talk about, and then we'll move on, but um, in terms of relationships, It eluded me. It'll come back. We'll move on to the next question. But I think it'll come back to me and we'll pop back in. Sorry, guys. This is what happens when you're on a podcast with a 55-year-old. Anyway, Coach Ray, when you walk into a classroom in a childcare center for the first time, what are the signs that tell you that the staff had built strong collaborative culture together? What are the signs? Like
The
maybe
first
someone's a new
thing I see,
director and they're looking.
one of the first things I look at is I look at the leadership and I look at their banter and how they are with their teachers, first of all. So I'm looking at like, are you going in doing check-ins, whether they're informal, formal? And I'm saying that because you have some leaders that go in and they aren't even saying good morning. So are you going in and saying good morning? Are you truly asking them, do they need anything? How's everything going so far? How is everything with you? Are you okay? Is everything good so far? And also, kind of tying back into previously when we talked about verbal and nonverbal communication, do you know your staff where I can tell something is up? Like I'll say for me personally, in May, I was out at Erica's conference and there was a day that she was just so intuitive, like she could pick up that I wasn't quite myself. It didn't matter what I told her. It didn't matter what I said. She was like, no, ma'am, you're not yourself. We'll talk about it later, but you're not yourself. So I think as a leader, first of all, that's something that I always like to look at. Do you know your staff? Can you look
Yeah.
at Mary and say, Mary is not married today? And Mary is telling me she's married today, but she's not married today. And
Mhm.
with between teacher and teacher, I love to see communication. I can tell when that's something that you normally do, or I can tell, as I say, and I'm one for anecdotes, but I can tell when it's a dog and pony show, when it's something that you're doing because you feel like I'm there and you want to
Yeah.
say, oh, well, we don't want Coach Ray to feel like we're not doing it, so we're going to try to do a little something. But I can tell when it's something you normally do. You all talk about it. You've all had those conversations. This person knows that during this time she does the diaper changes, and maybe during the afternoon you do the diaper changes. All of those things you can just intuitively tell that those communications happen and that they're consistently happening, and that you're having those conversations to be able to say, okay, does this still work? Do we need to change anything? On this particular day, are we checking in with each other to say, normally I do the diaper changes in the morning, but you know what? Today is just not my day. And I'm able to have that communication with you. I can see all of that versus when I walk in, you're trying to show me that. And I'm just like looking, but I'm definitely like, I don't know if this is something that necessarily really happens. I think it's just happening because I'm here. So those are the things I look at. I look at, are you really intuitive with your teacher? Are you making sure that they're okay? Are you willing to step in? Because yes, we have a schedule, right? We have a daily schedule and we have these things that we go by every day, but you have to be able to be flexible. Maybe I can't do what's on my job list or job duties of the daily schedule today as my co-teacher. Can you hop in and do that for me? All of those things come with communication and working with each other and constantly having those conversations to grow and implement a well-oiled machine between you two and between the center as a whole.
Yeah. The thing I think I was going to say earlier is when it comes to relationships too, we're talking about being collaborative and working together. We're not disillusioned. There are going to be times where people don't have the same opinion, right? There are going to be
Mhm.
times where we disagree. But at the same time, the culture has to be where we respect those differences and how will we overcome those differences. And sometimes teachers need some support to get around that. And other times they don't. So you have to really know when you're going to kind of let them work it out together and just touch base, or times where you need to intercede. So I think that is something that directors really need to pay attention to. But I think the work culture has to be one where it's said out loud. Here, our expectations are we're all professional. We can definitely have a difference of opinions. When we do, this is how we work it out. But I think there should be, some kind of framework around what that looks like. Because again, you can have 30 people, 40 people in a building who have all different experiences that they come and bring to your program, which again, having diversity in your teaching staff is a blessing, right? It's a blessing to have those different philosophies and different skill levels and all of those things. But sometimes that also can create some friction. So I think, we have to really be talking about things on a regular basis so that things don't end up blowing up into the volcano. So,
Totally
and
agree.
I think too, when you walk into a place, Coach Ray, you can tell because you are also a trained class observer. So you've had the opportunity to see many different programs. So how does staff collaboration impact the quality of teacher and child interactions?
So, as you know, me being a class observer, I would like to akin this to one of the class dimensions, which I always say is like the baseline, which is positive climate. That is status quo of what you need to have in your classroom in order to achieve quality. So I'm looking at how do the teachers work together? Even, and we talk about proximity and all those things, but how comfortable are the children around the teachers? And how comfortable are the teachers around each other? Again, it's not something that you can fake. You can try.
Yeah.
And like you said, I've looked in a lot of classrooms and they definitely try sometimes, but it's something innate. Children are just comfortable with coming up to you, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. I mean, they can come up to you and tell you, look at this picture I drew, or they can come up and tell you, hey, I got a boo boo 3 days ago. I need you to look at this. So, either one of those things, as it related to class, positive climate and teacher sensitivity, being able to acknowledge things that are going on with children, being able to acknowledge their feelings. And when we talk about it as adults, you want to have that same educator sensitivity toward your co-teacher or toward your leader or toward everybody in your center. You want to be able to acknowledge their feelings. Like you said, acknowledge is not necessarily agreement, but I can still respect and acknowledge the feelings that you have about something, whether they're good, bad, or indifferent.
Yeah. What would you say if there is maybe an issue with the teacher who maybe isn't quite as connected with the children as you would like them to be? Maybe what are some strategies or tips that the team can do to help support that teacher?
One of the best, and I would say most effective strategies that people can use for people is definitely modeling the behavior. You want to model the behavior in the classroom. A lot of times, I think as adults, we want to believe that everybody just naturally knows because we're a certain age. So we kind of akin that to a certain competency level, but that's not always the case. You don't know what you haven't been taught, you haven't seen, you know what I mean? So I can't expect you to know. I have to go in and say, you know what, this is a blank canvas. They really don't know. I can't assume that they know. So, what's the best way for me to get you to know? Whether it's me as a coach, whether it's you as a co-teacher, whether it's you as a leader, you want to go in and model that behavior effectively. And what I mean by model is there are two types of modeling. So you can kind of go in and do what I like to call everyday modeling. You're doing it correctly every day. The person is around you and they're kind of in close proximity to you doing it. But another type of modeling is intentional modeling, where that person is able to sit and watch you. They understand that this is a modeling segment. They're taking down notes. They're either, shooting video, whatever is their best way of receiving that information. And they are watching you for a length of time act out this thing, act out this dimension, act out this piece, or implement this piece accordingly. Then you're having that conversation with them. What did you get from this after you saw this modeling session? would you do anything differently when you have those feedback conversations? And also utilizing video to let them see themselves as well. I'm a huge proponent of that. I love being able to utilize video. I think it gets a person to see themselves when they aren't so controlled.
Yeah. And I think if you have video system in your program, that's a great way to do it, to use that, because a lot of times we use security cameras as just that, security, right? But they're a great
Mhm.
training tool, and you can use video in a couple different ways. You can make training videos and model videos,
Mhm.
so that way, again, because if you have to model it 100 times in a year, you might need something where people can go back and play it, where it's,
Yes.
a reenactment. And then you also can show video of that person in the room and say, take a look at this interaction with you and the child in the block area. Tell me what you
Yes.
see. Tell me what's going on. And then kind of dissect that. So that, there's two different ways that you can use video. And then you, as
Sure.
the ed coordinator, also, right, can look at that. If you see that your teachers in multiple classrooms are not hitting a benchmark or a standard that you need, then
Mhm.
okay, let me develop a workshop for my program, or hire someone like Coach Ray to come in and do something very specific around teacher-child interactions. But I would say, of all the things we talk about in quality for programming, I would say teacher-child interactions is probably at the top of that list, right?
Yes.
Materials, they kind of come and go. We all know a kid can play with the paper box and learn and grow and thrive just like $1 billion toy, right? But those teacher-child interactions are the cornerstone of early childhood education for sure.
Oh,
So,
definitely,
yeah.
Erica.
Um, so where do people get trainings for class, or where you are? Like, if somebody's interested in learning more about that, what should they do?
I'm glad you asked that. So there are a few avenues that you can use. If you would like to utilize me, I am actually what's called a class trainer for infant and toddler, and also a class observer from infants to third grade. So you can actually reach out to me via my website, www.heycoachray.com. And in the contact, you can specifically say you're looking to be trained in the class tool, and I definitely have some class, what I like to call my class chronicle series, workshop trainings that I have for it. And if you want something even deeper where you would want to be trained as a class observer yourself, that's something that I can customize for you as well. There's also on teachstone.com, which is the company that administers class. They actually have some videos as well for various dimensions in areas where you can go and look and actually see people doing it. I like to use a combination of both, because what I've run into as a coach is that I'll give out some videos and they'll tell me, Coach Ray, I see the video, but I don't know if that's realistic because it doesn't seem like a real class. So then that's when I'm able to come in with that modeling and using video, and then they're able to see themselves in the same realm as some of the Teach Stone produced videos. So you can reach out to me at my website, or you can DM me, Hey Coach Ray, on Instagram, and we'll be able to set something up as far as getting you all set for all things the class tool.
Yeah. And we'll leave a link in the show notes below. So, Coach Ray, let me ask you this. What are some of the
Mhm.
biggest barriers that you feel keep teachers and directors from working together effectively? We've talked about why it's important, but what do you think the barriers are?
I would say one of the biggest barriers I see is really the distrust. Teachers don't feel like leaders really understand them. They don't feel like leaders have any empathy towards them. They don't really feel like leaders see them as people. As far as teacher to teacher barriers, a lot of the barriers I see are, again, that kind of stem from a level of distrust. They feel like the other doesn't want to work with them, or they've, like you gave an example of, they feel like everything is supposed to be put on one teacher, or when you hear the hierarchy of lead teacher and assistant teacher, that comes with this particular list of duties in their minds that
Mhm.
sometimes makes the lead teacher or the other teacher feel like they're doing everything. It's very, I would say, collaboratively disproportionate.
Yeah.
So that's one of the biggest barriers I see.
Yeah. I think too, we have a lot of multi-generational folks working together, and that has changed the
For
work
sure.
culture a little bit. I feel like I have just heard over and over the new folks coming in, they're lazy, they have no work ethic, they don't want to work. And then you have the younger folks saying the old people are stuck in their old ways, and that's not
Yes,
how we do things now. So I think those are things that also need to be addressed right from the beginning, that everybody's voice matters. There
yes,
is, although there is this hierarchy, you don't have to have a hierarchy in your program. You have a choice. And we also use the word leader very loosely, which I would like to not use so loosely anymore. That's going to be like part of my hill that I die on. When we say leader, to me, right? To me, leader could be anybody. It's not a position. So
no,
when we use
yes.
the administrator, right? The administrators, because the people that are listening to this podcast right now, you could be a teacher assistant and you absolutely can be a leader. So when we say the leaders, I want for ECE, I want us to move to a place where we identify, what when we say leaders, I think we need to use that a little more specifically.
I
But again,
agree.
that's my hill, Coach Ray, that's my hill, for sure. But so to the directors that are listening, what are 3 practical things that they can do this week to bring their team together?
Three practical things that they can do. I would say one of them is go and have conversations with your staff. And what I mean by conversation is individual conversation. Start scheduling them, start having those one on ones and asking, how are things going? Because you're coming up on a new academic school year. I know for us here in Louisiana, we actually start in August. I know for some
Okay.
people it's September.
Yeah.
So start having those conversations. Also, start looking at shared vision. What does this look like? What is the vision for this new year? What do you see happening in your classroom? You will be amazed at some people's whose mouths open like, wait, they actually care about what's going on in my classroom? Really? And the third thing, Erica, which I think is very important, ask people about their growth path and growth trajectory. Start looking at those things. You have some people that really have big dreams and big goals, but because they're never really asked about them, they feel like they don't matter. The administration doesn't think that it's something that they can do, and legitimately look at how you can fit that in your program. And I know sometimes we have different programs, different funding streams, lack of funding, all of those things, all of those uncertainties are going on. But I think those are the three things you look at. You start to have those conversations with your staff. You want to look at like vision, goals, share vision. What does your vision and goal look like for your classroom and for yourself? The third thing, natural segue for yourself. What do you feel like growth path and growth trajectory looks like for you? And how can I support that? When you say that, how can I support that? That drops their mouths open because they're like,
Yeah.
oh, she actually cares about what's going on with me. She doesn't just want me to stay in the class every day and do nothing else. So,
Yeah.
those are the three tips that I would give, or strategies that I would give for administration for the upcoming school year.
Okay. So what I hear you say is, one, stop blowing off your one-on-ones, because we know that when we come in and we're dealing with the daily fires and all that, that's always the thing that gets pushed to the side. Typically, I don't say always, but typically is the thing that gets pushed to the side. The second thing I hear you say is shared vision. And I think that that's a good time to really go over your programs core values in your program's vision and make sure that the folks that are there are aligned with that vision, and that they understand what that vision and what the goals are, because that sometimes doesn't happen either. Or you tell somebody what your core values are in an interview, and they've been there 3 years and they've never heard it out other than in that
Right.
interview. Right. So that, and then the third thing is, I love what you said, build ask them about their growth. I think the growth should look both personal and professional. And a lot of times
Okay.
we'll say like, how do you want to move to the next role? Right. Cause it's just like, seems like that's the next thing is to move from a TA
Mhm.
to a teacher, but it may not be that. It may be something totally
Right.
different. So you can help them. What can you help your staff with? Maybe, we talk about, maybe not being paid a lot in this field. Maybe it's what other revenue resources can your staff earn beyond what they're making at your program? Can you help them with their credit score so they can buy that house or get that car? There's other things that we can do to support our
Yeah.
that don't even cost us money a lot of the times. And I think that there should be a written document, like a career lattice in your program that shows how do I move from this to this to this. And it doesn't, again, necessarily need to be a position. It could be, how do I get to learn how to do a tour? How do I get to learn how to do some of these other administrative things? Or how do I get to learn how to do curriculum planning or whatever it is that that person wants to learn to do? But I think there should be something in writing that shows people, because sometimes somebody's like, oh, I want to grow, but they don't really know. There's not a path. So I think having a written
Yes.
path is something that would be really helpful. And it's a great onboarding tool as well for new people who are coming into the field, right? Like, oh, there is room for growth here, because that was one of the things I felt was missing from the first program that I worked at. There was
Yeah.
never really a growth plan. It was just like,
Yeah.
and I was talking with Cheryl earlier, and we were talking about our earlier experiences back 27 years ago, where there wasn't a lot of conversation about growing your team. And it was almost like when you were a team member and you brought up about wanting to grow, it was almost like you got shot down. Like, whoa, we don't do that here. We don't want to do that because that means you'll make more
Right.
money, or
Hold
maybe
up.
you'll leave. Right? Maybe you'll leave. But we know now that the people that are in the work environment now, if you cannot show them where they can go or grow, they are out of there. And it's not because of the pizza party. It's not because what you pay them, because they already know getting in this field that you're not going to make $1 billion unless you have other streams of
I
revenue or,
know.
right? So
Mhm.
don't be afraid to grow your people, because they are your greatest assets. And as long as you have
Yes.
opportunities, they will stay, but they got to see those opportunities. So don't wait till it's too late when the 2 week, notice is on the desk and now you figured out how you're going to
It's like,
find some
what
money
am
or
I gonna do?
some position for them, right? All right, let me ask another one, Coach Ray, because I just love having you on the show. So how can leaders create an environment where teachers feel safe to share their ideas, to ask questions? Because that sometimes, without the fear of, making a mistake or the fear of being judged, because I know that that sometimes happens too.
I think, and I'm gonna make sure that I use the correct verbiage. I think
Thank
as
you.
administrator, you want to ensure that you are being, I would say, psychologically and emotionally a safe space for people. So you don't want teachers to feel like in your center that every error they make is like a woo kind of moment and oh my goodness, I'm gonna be in trouble. I think I love, this is something that I've used a lot with my teachers and with administrators. Make sure that when something does happen, you have those conversations to get back realigned. Stuff is going to happen. This is life. We're not living in a perfect world. Unintentionally or intentionally, people are going to do things that are unsavory. People are going to do things that are counteractive or counterproductive to what you might want in your center. It's how you react to it, especially if that person is not a person that is chronically doing things to cause discourse in your center. Something may happen, an error may occur. You, as an administrator, hold them accountable, but also let them still know how amazing they are and that
Yeah.
their that error is not some unredeeming error, right? I held you accountable for that error. And holding accountable may mean I have to write you up for this, but that doesn't mean that you're any less amazing. And after you let them know that they're amazing, let's make sure we sit down and we become realigned. Let's get that alignment back together. Let's see what happened to cause that error so that that doesn't become a pattern. We don't want that to become a pattern. So let's look at what we need to do.
Yeah.
After
I think
that,
go ahead. She's like, after that.
then after that, for me, that's when you start to really see that ascension in your program. Because these things aren't linear. We're dealing with a bunch of human beings that are going to do things that we don't like. This path, this thing is not linear. No matter how great of a center we have, something is
Yeah.
going to happen.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, you have to think about a few things, right? You can have a classroom that's running really great, and then you get three new students and it throws everything off. Or you can have a
Yeah.
teacher that's out for 3 weeks on medical leave and that throws everything off. The other thing I want to say to our administrators that are listening is the best way to have your staff asking, questions and not being afraid to make mistakes is one, give them the opportunity to make a mistake, meaning give them a new task or a project to work on. So they'll ask questions. Secondly, at your staff meetings, a lot of times your staff meetings, you are the only one talking. I would make every staff meeting mandatory that everybody brings a question, a thought, or a suggestion to that meeting. So stop making the agenda where it's all you and all you're going down is the laundry list of wear your uniform, get off your phones, be on time. Like, how many times are you going to do that, right? You really need to do things that are going to transform the people in your program. And the way that you do that is by action and practice. So every staff meeting, they should already know you've got to bring a suggestion, a question, an idea, something to contribute. The more you ask for their voice, the more they're going to use it. If it's just you always
Yeah.
like, we're going to have a staff meeting and I'm going to talk and you're going to listen, that is not collaboration at all, in my idea. Anyway, what do you think?
No, they're like, oh, another staff meeting, another gripe session where
Yes.
she's gonna give me all the wrong things, things that I'm not doing, things that I need to do better, things that we need to get better at, and then I'm disengaged at that point
Yeah.
because I feel like that's all the administrator does anyway. So
Yeah. So one of the things we actually stopped having staff meetings around that. I told my daughter and my other director, Ange, I said, listen, I pay for staff meetings and I don't want to have a staff meeting repeating the same thing over and over. If somebody's not wearing their uniform, that's not a meeting. You bring the person in the office and address it to that person because the other 9 people are wearing their uniform. So why are they going to take time away from their family to come in? I'm going to waste my good money, which I'd rather spend on toys and raises than meetings about, a dress code because 2 people out of
mhm.
20 aren't wearing it, right? But we do it over and over. The same thing with the phone and the same thing with being late. Take those people in the office, address that one-on-one. If there's a bigger policy issue, then, a bigger program issue, then yeah, absolutely. But other than that, I would say bring that person in one-on-one and use those staff meeting times for things that bring people together for collaboration and growth. That's where you invest the money. That's where you invest the time, not this, like you said, gripe sessions, which happens a lot, and have everybody bring something. I would be like, we're having our staff meeting and give me something for the agenda. And that would be, that would be a great way to get some collaboration. All right. As we start to
Definitely
wrap
because
up,
they feel like that things are autonomous. Then, oh, they actually asked me. Wow.
yeah. So as we start to wrap up, Coach Ray, because you and I could go on for 2 hours, I think we could do like a Joe Rogan podcast, just Erica and Coach Ray chatting. But can you share a success story of a program that you've worked with where intentional collaboration transformed the culture? Like what changed? What lessons can our listeners learn or take away from it?
Oh, yes, this is an awesome one because this actually just happened for me this year. So I'll give some context. Historically, I support a lot of centers that are what we would say like approaching proficient. So they definitely need some support and some help in various areas. So I went to this center, and you know how it is, Erica, with word of mouth. We have this center, and this is the horror center. Nobody wants to go there. Nobody wants to have them. And I think for me, I'm definitely a optimistic person. So my eyes are open, and I'm open until I can't be anymore. So I went in, and I'll tell you, we did a lot of intensives first. I really worked with the director and realized, Erica, that a lot of the issue was not that she didn't want to do it. A lot of it was that she, as a director, didn't know. She didn't have any previous experience in any of it. And she just didn't know. She didn't really have great guidance. And she kind of felt like she was a fish out of water herself. So it was like she was the whale out of water, and the little tiny fish out of water were the teachers. So I did a lot of work with her, getting her to understand classroom arrangements as it relates to teacher-child interactions, classroom management, really working on that positive climate, getting the teachers to understand that being able to speak to the children in a way that's positive was important. And that's not something that people just always know off the bat. Some people don't know that. They have to be taught those things. And I would say she went from, in our official, well, we have performance profiles come out next month, but her preliminary score, she actually went from an approaching proficient center to a high proficient center, which is one step away from an excellent center. So now in the state of Louisiana, she has gone from not being eligible for funding to now she's eligible for several different type of fundings from several different entities. She, as an owner, she went from like 1 foot in, 1 foot out to like, oh, I can do this, and I can bring more children in. And you know how it is, the more enrollment, the better. Her teachers felt better. Her teachers felt better with having conversations with her. They actually just went out bowling about 2 weeks ago as an entire center. They went from not doing any of these things, nothing together, to being able to have these outings that they actually do bi-monthly. So that is my success story this year. And I will tell you, I shed a couple tears because I was just so happy.
Oh, did I lose you? Okay. Sorry. I don't know. The audio went. I think it was my internet. Paul, I'm sorry about that. So they went bowling. They never were able to do anything like that in the past. And so now they're like doing team events together. Yeah, we lost a little quick connectivity, but we got the gist of it. So Coach Ray, is there anything you would like to leave the listeners that I didn't ask you before we wrap up for the day?
Oh, I have to think because I feel like we covered so much. We're always able to have really organic conversations that spanned a lot of subjects and to kind of that overarching thing that we were talking about. But what I would like to leave the listeners is make sure that we talk about collaboration and how people should initiate it, but just make sure everybody that you are open as people and that you're open and willing to be able to collaborate with the people around you in order to really see ascension in your program and even think about it in your life. Really, to see ascension in your life, make sure that you're open to those things, even when it's not easy.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Coach Ray, thank you as always for being such an amazing guest. To our listeners who tune in every day, we absolutely love you. I cannot believe that this Saturday is going to be our 3-year anniversary. We have been getting together for 3 years, and I could not be more blessed. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. As always, you are listening to the Child Care Directors Champ podcast. This is your host, Erica Sacosio. As always, have a great day.
Bye.
That's a wrap for this episode of the Child Care Director's Chair, where we believe leaders aren't born, they're grown. If something sparked for you today, share it, shout it out, or pass it along to the next bold changemaker in childcare. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and stay connected with Erica Sakosio for more real talk leadership tools and a whole lot of inspiration. Until next time, lead with heart, grow with fire, and always remember, the chair is yours. Now own it.